really worked out. In fact, I used it on the county commission, but that's rejection. It's right. I'm one of those.
Don't reject authority.
I do.
You reject the rejections.
I reject. Right, Steve?
Can't hear over here, so I don't know what kind of trouble you guys.
It's all about that value,
Question.
generational perspective.
Oh, I got
Enough.
that too.
Just email.
A YouTube thing.
Yeah.
Well, when's your birthday?
May
Year,
6th,
year.
58,
What's the last part?
58.
Got it.
Balancing a life between work and personal, I have no life.
Yeah,
I'm younger than me.
I'm the oldest guy. Jerry's older than I am.
Better than I have.
It's just it's a people's generational kind of predilections or tendencies. How about your?
69.
I went to school with her daughter. Bobby.
Oh, you're with Bob?
My cousin.
Oh, all right, that makes more sense.
I hit the back.
Bob too.
Oh.
How about you? Your year of birth?
80.
A young
I don't
pup.
know. I mean, I'm gonna get bits and pieces. If I
Oh, yeah.
Keno over there or what?
Yeah.
Are you playing Keno?
No, it's just a way, I mean, we don't have lunch to,
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
Call
She could
the
jump.
finance committee of the whole meeting to order and join me in the pledge, if you would. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all. And clear the roll call, please.
Commissioner Weber,
here,
Commissioner Campbell,
here,
Commissioner Jelazinski.
Here.
Commissioner Engler,
Here.
Commissioner Marino,
here.
Commissioner Sweeney,
Here.
Commissioner Hope.
Here.
All present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Up next is approval of the agenda. We'll start with general public comments. We've started this year restricting the first general public comment to agenda items only. And then the second general public comment towards the end of the meeting will be for anything that anybody wants to bring up. We don't have any presentations or special reports. No appointment. We have several appointments to boards and commissions. We'll go through those and discuss those. And then finance committee of the whole. Business items, we have 11 business items to take care of. And then no intergovernmental affairs, no administrative controller issues, no unfinished business, no new business. For general public comment again, and then announcements and then adjournment. So motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Support.
Sir,
Yes,
Mr. Chair, could we change the new business one? Could I add something on new business?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I just want to add a discussion about the Heart Association's request that we do a proclamation about February being Heart Week, a month or something like that.
Very good. Okay, well,
Thank you.
so with that addition to new business, is there a motion?
So moved as amended.
Support.
Moved and supported. All those in favor say yes.
Yes,
All those opposed say no. Very good. We have an agenda. Who's this to general public comments? Anyone for general public comments? Seeing no one for general public comment, we'll move right down to appointments to boards and commissions. And I'll kind of go through those. If anybody wants to speak to any of those, just jump in there. If you know any of those folks or have anything you want to say about a particular board or commission, but the first one's consider appointing Katie Mora to the Great Lakes Bay, Michigan Workforce Development Board to complete a 2-year term ending June 30th, 2026, or until a successor is appointed. Katie is the new Mid-Michigan Development CEO. I'm sure that she'll do a fantastic job.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I worked with Katie for a long time. I knew her since she had used to have an article, column in the newspaper. She's a dietitian, and she, like you said, she's the new president of the Mid-Michigan Development Corporation. But she's really smart, and I'm sure she'd make a great contribution to this Workforce Development Board.
Thank you. Commissioner Pilzinski.
I've been able to watch Katie over many meetings of the Middle Michigan Development Corporation, and she is organized. She's quite the lady, quite the professional. I think she'd be an outstanding appointment.
Very good. Item B, consider appointing one member to the Isabella County Board of Public Works to complete a vacated 3-year term ending December 31st, 2025, or until a successor is appointed, with Tim Warner as the applicant for that seat. Tim worked in the Drain Commissioner's office for, I believe, 35 years. Very well qualified for that. Item C then is consider appointing one member to the Commission on Aging Advisory Board, District 7 representative to complete a 3-year term ending December 31st, 2027, or until a successor is appointed. We have the applicant, John Zhang. That was a seat that's my district, and I had a difficult time finding someone for quite a while to fill that seat. We finally, John Zhang stepped up and said that he would like to do it, so appreciate John for that. Item D, consider appointing one member to the 9/11 Advisory Board, county representative, to complete a 2-year term ending December 31st, 2026, or until a successor is appointed. The applicant is Sharon Brown. She's an incumbent, and she's been on that board for some time. Got to bring my notes with me, but I know it's been.
Did we have any other, I thought that when we pulled this from the last meeting, that we had other applicants on this. Was that a different seat on the 9/11 board that we had applicants? I thought we had like
Don't.
John Hayes and Bob Bush. I obviously we normally vote for an incumbent, but
Just a minute, we got.
you pulled his app?
He pulled this out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
He was
I-
respectful to Sharon.
Okay.
Sharon was.
Okay, that's great. I just didn't want someone to be accidentally missed.
Okay. Anything else on that one? All right, item E, consider appointing 2 members to the Isabella County Material Recovery Facility Advisory Board for 2-year terms ending December 31st, 2026, or until a successor is appointed. And we do have 2 incumbents for those 2 positions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just want to speak up for Anna Franson. She's been on the advisory board for a number of years. She actually served as chairman for, I don't know, maybe 4 years of the committee. So she's been a very active member. She would be sorely missed as an incumbent.
Very good. Yes, sir.
When we come down to vote, I will be supporting Patricia Sandell. She's was a long-term clerk for Coe Township, but very interested in Coe Township. They have one of the remote sites in the county. And she's a very organized, very professional lady. I think she'd do a great job.
Just on, I follow that note. I would support Patricia Sandell as well. I know she's very active in the community. Wanted to play a role in helping it, so.
This is one where I wish we had 3 more spots because
Right,
John Hayes
Yeah.
and Patricia Sandell and Ruth Barrett, I know all of those folks. They're all good, hardworking folks, would serve as well.
And since we dismissed the ad hoc committee for the rebuild on the first facility, this committee is going to take a larger vote going forward on the rebuild. So I know that, so there'll be more, we'll be spending a lot more time on this because we did get rid of the one committee, so.
Yeah, okay.
I know Ruth personally also, and she's very passionate, anything she gets her hands on, so.
She is. I have worked with Ruth for many years.
Yeah.
She'd be another good person.
Like I say, I wish we had 3 more spots.
Right.
We can make them.
We actually talked about expanding the advisory committee,
Oh, yeah, that might not be a bad idea.
just because of the workload that we might want to bring in some more people.
Mhm.
If not that, maybe as what do you call them? Not a direct voting member, but, there's a,
Officio.
yeah, officio director on there if we don't want to expand it, but try to
Mm.
give them a seat on there. They wouldn't have voting rights or they wouldn't have to vote for a quorum, but,
Mhm.
I know some of the people we had on the ad hoc committee, we had Central in there, someone from the tribe. I said, we had a pretty good group. Someone from Union, so. We might be bringing that forward later to see if we can expand that a little bit for the board, but, it is gonna get a lot more work involved in that, so.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on that one? Okay, F is consider appointing one member to the Isabel County Planning Commission to complete a vacated three-year term ending December 31st, 2025, or until a successor is appointed. We have two non-incumbent applicants. And that would be the seat, I imagine, that Bob Campbell vacated.
I'm back on it.
Yes, as a
That's a
Is it
different
county?
role.
any comments? Yes.
Yeah, I had opportunity to work with, Russ Hyde a couple of times. He's one of those guys that wants to get involved in the government, I get, or, so I found him to be very enthusiastic and wanting to get involved in county business. I said, like to encourage, people that want to get involved. There's a lot of people there that's been there forever, but got two open seats there, so, yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Did you have a comment?
I was just gonna say, I know Tim Wolf has done an amazing job out of Lake Isabella.
Yep, both pretty well qualified folks. I do feel that we should try to get a kind of a section of folks from around the county. And I kind of feel like Lake Isabella is pretty well represented on that committee already. And I also feel that I looked at Mr. Hyde's application and it's very impressive recommendation or qualifications. Probably support Russell Hyde in that. It's my
I've worked with Russell Hyde on in HRC, and I know that he has always presented himself as listening to all sides and making an informed decision on that. So taking that methodology to the planning commission would work well. Plus, I know he is very passionate about ADA. So support that side.
very good. Okay, then next up. Consider appointing one member to the Veterans Affairs Committee to complete a four-year term ending June 1st, 2028, or until a successor is appointed. Terry Kunst is the incumbent. And we also have two other applicants, Carol Shannon and John Hayes. All really well qualified people with impressive applications. So you generally like to reappoint incumbents if they want to stay on.
Mhm.
Okay. So H, consider appointing one member to the Construction Board of Appeals, Architectural Engineering Representative to complete a two-year term ending December 31st, 2026, or until a successor is appointed. And just one applicant, which makes this one easy, and that would be Miklos Ferber. Miklos is a wonderful member of the community and very knowledgeable, and he's helped us out tremendously on the new correctional facility. Taking that on as an owner representative at no charge to us. Just because he likes to stay busy, I guess. Yes, sir.
sitting across the table at the owners, architect, contractor meetings for the correctional facility. We call him Mike, was there, very insightful questions and been a good resource representing the county on that committee.
Very much appreciated. Okay, I is consider appointing one member to the Human Rights Committee, tribal representative to complete a 3-year term ending September 1st, 2027, or until a successor is appointed. Amy Chavus is the applicant. She has been on that committee for a number of years. She's very engaged, very active in that.
I haven't been on the committee with it, who's very active in the committee. I think, yeah, it's been there since 2012 with the tribes.
And J is consider appointing one member to Human Rights Committee for Public Schools Representative to complete a 3-year term ending September 1st, 2027, or until a successor is appointed. Laura Gourlay also has been on that committee for a while, also very active and very engaged in that committee. She is a registered not a counselor, but a social worker for Mount Pleasant Public School. Does a perfect job. Yes, so sure.
First of all, she's my neighbor, so I know her really well, and I've known her for a long time, and she's very active in all kinds of great issues, and I'm really glad she's there, and I'm glad that I'm going to be working with her and the others in the HRC.
Very good. And K is consider appointing 2 members to the Human Rights Committee at-large representatives to complete 3-year terms ending September 1st, 2027, or until a successor is appointed. We have 4 applicants for those 2 spots. Nicole Hagel, Danny McBorders, Robert Lankowski, and Miranda Lay. Nicole Hagel and Danny McBorders being the incumbents. So, yes.
Worked with both of them, of course, this past years. Nicole, very active, a vet, a teacher, very interested in this committee, very active in everything they do. Danny McQuarters is also very active and works for Central Michigan University, so he's a great representative from that resource for us because he works with their DEI group. I think the incumbents are very good fits. It would I have good things to say about the other 2, but I couldn't see replacing them.
Very good, thank you. And so, do we need a motion to move those, or we just, no? Okay, so those move forward to next Tuesday's regular session, and we'll make a decision on all those at that time. And brings us down to committee reports, Finance Committee, Committee of the Whole. And Administrator Smith, you want to walk us through the invoice
Yes, sir.
lists?
The first invoice list is dated January 17th, 2025 for a total amount of $255,053.81. One of the big ones on there is Preston Community Services for the monthly equalization contract of $19,375. We have legal fees, we have manpower, and then we also have waste management on there. So out of this is the general fund payment of $81,176.12.
Real quick. So as you see on the Conservation District, 2% money, I said, we're glad to see that. I got the dates here going forward on this, but we have to schedule so far ahead and we didn't have enough money at that time. So actually, we went ahead and scheduled that. We found some extra money. There's always a couple, $500 here, maybe $1,000 here. It's a grant, but you have to talk to the grant provider. So we did find enough money kind of scraping to go forward with this. We weren't quite there, but now with this 91 going through there. So we are going to have two two pickups, because everything else goes up, and I'll just give you the dates right now. I'll repeat them several times. So the hazardous waste will be June 14th, September 13th. And for the tire pickup will be May 10th and October 4th. And those are always at the fairgrounds, and they'll be at 8 to noon or whenever the trucks get full, so.
Did you give those dates? for
Yeah,
us?
the hazardous waste.
Hazardous waste, June 14th, September 13th. For the tire pickup, May 10th and October 4th, and you can go to the Facebook page. There's some, for the tires, they don't take big tractor tires. There's some restrictions out there, so I'll check with that. So there is a limit. You can't bring 50 tires. You can't remember what the limit is, but anyway, sorry, that's all I had.
Just wanted to make a comment on the invoices from Green Scene Landscaping. You notice there's quite a few of them. That's the snow removal. Just had a conversation with Director Schumacher, those are paid by event, right? That was put out for bids, last year or the year before. Okay. And they were the lowest bidder, and Director Schumacher tells me they do a fantastic job, so. That's the little background on those invoices.
Okay, next up is the January 24th invoice list, for a total of $268,283.51. For a general fund, $127,726.91. This morning, it was noticed that there was an incorrect payment made onto Raymond Robson for Progress Billing 2. This was already paid, so this check has been voided and has not been sent out. So our system of checks and balances and looking everything over works, because it was noticed before it was sent out. So that has been voided. So when you have the next invoice sheet for final approval, it'll have the respective $20,000 in both those totals. So the new total would be $107,762.91 for the general fund and $248,283.51 for all combined. And so that was found out, and it'll be rectified when you approve it on your February 4th regular board meeting.
And then the adjustment list is just a list of bills that we don't make the invoice list because we pay them early for early payment discounts.
And there's quite a few on this since we go back into December with the December 7th organizational meeting and the way we restructured from subcommittee to this. There was some time gaps on getting it sent out. So with this, and I believe the next one will be fully caught up with everything. So this is just playing catch up. Then after the next meeting, we'll be fully caught up into a more regular schedule. So it just shows a couple deleted duplicate invoices, but there's only a few of them, but 99% of them were added to meet due dates or to avoid interest or late payment. Thanks.
And the rest of these, do you want to just?
I'll just walk it through. Yes,
Okay.
sir. So for item 2, this is budget amendment 2025-05. This is to increase the budget to reflect the deputy sergeant detective severance due to permanent layoff and authorize the board chairman to sign same. This was discussed. And you had all the numbers on this. This just formalizes where the money is coming from and where it's going to. So when we had discussed and the board had approved severance payments, this is the exact dollar that the board saw that night. And this just formalizes it in the budget amendment. So moving forward, when we come to a vote, I'll make sure that the budget amendment right here is with all the other documents. We're not have to go back again and duplicating the process.
And I believe most of that money came from,
Vested benefits in the fund balance, you have amount of vested benefits that if everybody were to leave, this is what the county would be liable to pay out. And so this is just coming from the fund balance designated vested benefit.
And I believe the sheriff mentioned that, let me know if I'm wrong, that, there were, the budget for November, December from early leaving salaries, also covered quite a bit of it.
No, we took the full amount out of there. That would be just an overage. That would be just money that would be saved. in
I mean,
overall-
salaries saved from people who had left early.
Yes,
Okay,
but this is just taking the total impact out of the vested benefits and we didn't like move a bunch of numbers around. We want to make it as simple, as clean as possible.
so that would just be, that would just show us under budget for the year.
Correct, sir. Okay, then, number 3, we go to consider approving budget amendment 2025-06 to increase the budget for deputy, sergeant, and detectives vacation and sick payouts due to permanent layoff, and authorize the board chairman to sign the same. It's basically the same lines. A couple, well, no, there's vacation and sick payouts, but it's taken from the same vested benefits. This is the amount of money that the county was obligated to pay out when the permanent layoff occurred. So it comes from vested benefits in the fund balance, and then it goes to the vacation and sick payouts, and then FICA retirement and workers' comp. And this is the one that should have been sent out in your earlier January meeting, because this was already done and has been prepared. So that's what I discussed at the last meeting, that we want to make sure that these are processed in a more timely manner, but this just reflects those numbers that we are obligated to pay.
We need to have a little more discussion on this for the commissioners and you guys have any questions on this?
No.
So I would get it very fast because of the timeline. They would not receive any benefits till late February. So, you know, they got laid off right before Christmas.
Yeah.
And it just.
One thing you
So-
never want to do is mess with payroll.
I know, it looks like it happened, but if we didn't
Right.
do it. At the end, they they wouldn't see any benefits and there was probably a gap even though most of that old jobs. It was
Not right to know.
bad time. So, yeah, I just want to make sure you guys.
Yeah,
Are brought up and aware to it. So.
Okay, number 4, this is to consider approving budget amendment 2025-07 to appropriate funds to general fund for WatchGuard V300 units and in-car video systems, and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same, and you have a detailed narrative from Sheriff Maine explaining why there is a need to move these monies around, and on the very back page, you will see that there is a budget adjustments that have been done to reflect the need for $30,976, and the monies are coming from the commissary commissions fund. That is a separate holding fund that's in the budget. In the past, monies that have come out of this fund have helped pay for police vehicles and other items. So we're utilizing this money to help cover back some payments that are needed for the past year or two on this item. And normally this, if it was within the general fund, if it's under 50,000, then my office could just administratively sign off on this. But since it involves the transfer from fund to fund, this requires Board of Commission approval.
I guess I found it interesting that when we were delinquent, like 2 years on payment of the one bill, they didn't just cut off the service and leave us hanging high and dry. Allowed us to catch up now.
So I credit the sheriff for giving us a very detailed background on this one. It's a very complicated issue, so I wouldn't do it any justice trying to explain it, but I think he did a great job here explaining it for that. And if you have a paper copy, the budget adjustment is on the very back page of this, so you can see where the monies are coming from and where they're going to. Is there any questions?
Yeah. that's fine. Number 5, consider approving the prime contract change order number 32 with Clark Construction in the net credit amount of $11,290 and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same. Do we have Heidi?
Heidi just
Looks
joined
like
us
we do.
again. Yes, she is on. Heidi on? Or do I gotta unmute her?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, sorry, I had to unmute myself. I had to join from my phone because I'm having internet issues out here today, this morning for some reason. So, um, quickly going through PCCO number 32 for you. This is a total, credit of $11,290. The remaining buyout is $327,537. And total remaining buyout and contingency is $1.1 billion. Kind of running through our list here. The first item on our is PCO number 186. This one here was a credit for the talk sets that are out in the visitation rooms. The phones were actually provided by the phone company that the sheriff has for all the inmate phones. So this is a credit of $406 that went to buyout. The next item on our list here is PCO number 233. This was a credit from our painting company. Originally, we were going to paint all the bases of the tables out in the detention area. Because they came powder coated black, we elected, I should say the sheriff elected not to paint those. So that was a credit of $6,300 back to buyout. Next item is PCO number 236. This one here was a back charge from contractors for a cost for some damage on a light fixture. There was no cost to the county on that one. The next item is PCO number 238. This one here was a scope gap. When we were writing our scopes, we did not know that we would need some caulk there at the mezzanine. So we add this caulk, security caulk in all the mezzanines in the detention area. It was an ad of $680 out of buyout. The next item on our list here was a partial allowance deduct from mechanical contractor of $30,000 that went into buyout. Next item is PCO number 249. This was a credit for card readers at the roof. We did not need, the card readers would not work with the maglots, so we kept the intercom for basic bid, and this is a credit of $3,864. And that went into buyout. The next item is PCO number 250. This was here for some requirements that the sheriff needs for the facility. Was the Guardian packaging system for inmate clothing, vacuum sealer, includes the bags and the film. And this was an ad of $28,600 that we took from buyout. Next item is again, this was a back charge between contractors. Delivery truck decided to turn around in the green space, which is the lawn. To repair that in the spring here is going to be a cost of $2,049. And that is our total for PCCO number 32. Are there any questions?
Nice to see a credit.
I'm sorry?
I said it's nice to see a credit.
Oh, yes.
And we have not yet touched the contingency.
Correct.
Very good. And what percent complete are we now, would you say, Heidi?
So we are doing our final inspections today. We have the building inspector, fire marshal out, and mechanical inspector doing all our fire tests right now. We are anticipating turning this over on Friday, as long as our tests go well today and Thursday. So I would say we're 99% complete.
All right. Sounds good, thank you.
You're welcome.
How many items are left on the checklist for contractors to finish off?
Off the top of my head, punch list items, I think this morning was about, I know we had, this is gonna tie in and site stuff that we're gonna have to do in the spring. I think there was about 70.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So it's nice to see just remaining in the buyout, not touching the contingency is $327,537. And I know at the last OAC meeting, the sheriff brought up a couple of things he'd like to have placed back into the project, very important components that he'll be bringing forward in the future. And from his explanation, I think they'd be both very desirable to include back in the project. They were cut out early to save the project money, but in terms of operational efficiency, I'm looking forward to him bringing those forward.
And to kind of follow up on that conversation, I've had contact with the bond attorney to verify funds could be used from the bond for the project, for what sheriff is proposing. So that makes sure that we're all covered on that. So before any vote was taken, you'll have verification from our bond attorney on if it's allowable or not.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Number 7. Sorry, actually, number 6, consider approving the emergency management, emergency action guidelines and authorize board chairperson to sign the same. We have Director Geddes.
Good morning.
So this is the plan whenever a disaster happens. And there's a change in the chairperson and myself being the new director, that it's just a signature page to make sure the plan is complete. So this plan has already been approved by the commission. It's just signatures based on a new chairperson of the board and myself. So
We wanted to throw the full 50-page document in there to make sure, just especially for the two new commissioners, so that they're aware of.
This is only prelude to the whole plan.
Yeah.
this is.
I've asked for the whole plan once and that was a mistake because it's like
Wow.
So let's just make sure that
5 books. So it's like, no, I'm not doing that again.
that the two new commissioners are aware of what it all entails and stuff like that. So that's why we threw all the pages in there for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sometime also for the new commissioners, if you'd like to tour that dispatch center, it's a real eye opener. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. By all means, step on out and we're doing for our emergency management meetings that we have monthly on the first Wednesday. We're going to start incorporating quarterly trainings with the whole EOC staff. So
Yeah.
that's fun to see if you've never been a part of it, to see the technology we have and what we've done with that. It's pretty impressive. So
Okay.
Thank you.
yep, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 7, consider accepting the amended Renewable Ready Communities Award in the amount of $395,000 and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same. Director Neeport.
Good morning, commissioners. So this is the Renewable Ready Communities Award. This was the award that was given to us for the Mission Road Solar Project. Mission Road Solar Project had 150 megawatt nameplate at application time of power. That has changed not by footprint, but by technology of their own within. They can produce 158 with the panels that were approved. When we learned of that, we called the state of Michigan, who had already provided us with the $375,000 grant, and said, hey, you owe us another $20,000. This is their amended agreement that they've provided to us in agreement with that additional $20,000. So this is just a request to sign by the chairperson, the amended award for $395,000 for the Renewable Ready Community Grant. The grant, for those of you who are new, is a grant that is targeted. It needs to be utilized in renewable energy resources. We have, I believe, assigned this to, at this time, and it can be changed, to solar panels on the rooftop of the county building to aid in long-term reduction of utility costs at that facility. If for some reason we don't use it for that purpose and we want to change it to some other purpose, we just have to amend that agreement again with the state of Michigan.
Is there a deadline that we have to use those funds by?
I want to say it's 28. I don't know if I have it with me here. I don't think I brought the whole. I think I just brought the amendment.
So we have time to spend it.
We do have time to spend
That's
it.
good.
It's a couple of years. I think it's by 28. That's what I have in my head. But we do have some time to definitely spend.
Would be a suggestion for secondary site, say like the criminal, correctional facility.
Facility site. Yep.
Since it's got the newest roof. Or the clock line.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a rooftop. It can be ground mount. But yeah, the monies would be
parking lot.
there available. I think we have there are definitely other options to spend the money. We won't let it go to waste if that option of the top of the 200 North Main Street building doesn't work.
Yes.
Not related to this, but it is related to solar farms. I've been driving by them and they're all oriented to the west. And I did ask a GTE representative at one of the Middle Michigan Development Corporation meetings about why. And he said, well, they are articulated. Well, when I went back again, I see they're all on a long pipe. They're articulated this way, but they won't turn south. So I did a little research on the internet on my own and found out that a lot of these large solar commercial are oriented to the west for the specific reason that peak demand for electricity is usually in the evening. And so that gives more immediate where you don't have maybe storage. You do get more generation if those collectors are oriented to the sun, but probably it's because dealing with batteries and everything, they don't have it. So it's on demand and they get more in the evening that way.
Also, the inclination of the sun, so in the mornings, they'll be faced to the east like this, and they'll turn with time to the west as we go through the day. When you think about that, sun's coming up here at inclination, and it does one of these in the wintertime across our sky. So the lower it is, the more they're picking up in an east-west face than they are due south face, because you're not going to spin those things this way. And in the summertime, they still have that overhead capability because that sun now does this over the top of us. So they're the scientists with regard to it. I believe them, but it appears that that is the best way to collect is in east-west with the articulation.
It's just one of those mysteries
Yeah.
that bug me.
Yeah, sure.
Glad you found out about it.
And our solar farm right now is not yet hooked up, so they're just sitting there in one space.
Correct. Not completely wired at this point. My
So
understanding.
they're not gonna be moving until they're.
June-ish. I think
Hooked
they
up.
were, target date was June. I've seen a report come through. I think it was yesterday I looked at it. That they are beginning, they're 96% completed with their T-posts. So the posts that they pound in to hold the racking systems, which hold the panels. They're at 96% there. They're starting to phase in and drop off fence posts and fencing. So they're beginning the exterior fence postings, which poses a little problem for us. We got to find a way to get into these once they're fenced to continue our inspections for soil erosion and such. But they're chugging along. They're well ahead of schedule, I think, at this point. And keep in mind, this is a solar farm that was approved for 229 acres of solar panels. The farm itself is much bigger. We have much more acreage of people who are participants with it, people who may be receiving monies from DTE for being a participant, but actual solar panels is 229 acres of solar panels, which is what, just over just over a quarter of one section, and we have 576 square miles or 576 sections in the county. So it is a very minute amount of land that's being carried by panels themselves in this program.
So once the solar farm gets producing electricity, then the revenue changes, right?
Yeah, so I believe like from a you're talking property tax revenue, personal property tax revenue for this year will be under construction. Last year will be under construction. This year, there'll be an under construction, and then next year will be a full cycle of them after they're in place.
Thank you.
What does depreciation look like on that personal properties?
You guys got a lot of questions that I'm gonna have to dig back this morning.
Roughly.
It depreciates faster, if I remember correctly, the depreciation schedule, do you know it, Brian, better?
No,
than
I'm
me?
not off the top of my
Okay.
head, but it's faster than it was.
It's quicker than the turbines.
Okay.
It's still over a lengthy period, but there's still that bottom line. Like for turbines, it's a 30% for the life of the project. So when you think about your revenue schedule, you know, you think about a revenue schedule and you got this value over here and it depreciates down. Once it hits that 30%, that's constant. That's constant revenue at that line there. That stuff up above here is sort of all that gravy revenue per se that kind of comes and goes as they make replacements to nacelles or make
Mhm.
replacements to parts. You'll have some depreciation and some added. It's self-reporting by DTE. They self-report that stuff, but we've created a process in my office so that we can catch a lot of that to ensure that the reporting is done. And that is, you know, we're asking them on modifications to still come back into our office and apply for an administrative permit. Because like in Ottawa Township, you've probably noticed a few blades this last,
Oh, yeah.
like 6 months going in.
Yeah.
They got new, I drove down Wynn Road and I look over and here's another one of these radius turns that they have to move. And I'm like, we cleaned all those up years ago. Why is there another one here? Which tips us off. They're changing blades. They got to do that. And so I asked them, you know, before the public starts calling us wondering what's going on and we don't know, come apply for these permits to our office. So we're going to start an annual meeting with them probably pretty soon here for this coming year to know all their maintenance requirements that they have, to know where they're going to be placing these. And it's a simple permitting process on our end, but it's more of a tracking process so that we know where there's new or replaced equipment going out there.
Why are they replacing blades?
They wear out just like anything. Yeah.
So they're gonna have to go through the
Yep.
whole field.
Yeah, in time, they'll all wear right through. Yep. It's just like any other, they're fiberglass. You know, they can only take so much stress before they get out of balance and stuff. And my understanding, and I'm not sure if this is exactly true, but I'd heard that, you know, the 3 blades are built for one hub. And when those 3 builds are built for that hub, it's balanced to those. So it's like balancing the tires on your car. You take one off, you put a new blade in there, it doesn't always balance. So a lot of times they're ended up replacing the 3 blades in there. Seems wasteful to me. I'm not sure that that's actually correct, but that is what I've heard goes on there.
Any other questions on that? Very good. Next one, consider accepting and placing on file the 2024 Isabella County Planning Commission annual report as presented.
Yeah, so Michigan Planning Enabling Act, Public Act 33 of 2008 requires us to have the Planning Commission prepare a report, an annual report, and provide it to the board. The report looks similar to previous years. I'm going to kind of cruise through it a little bit. If you have questions at the end, I'll take the questions at the end if you have questions about it. Section 1 is just introduction, talks about state statute and where our requirement for doing so is. Section 2 is our membership, talks about our members. Section 3 is a discussion of meetings. We did hold 10 meetings, regular meetings, 1 special meeting in 24, and that was for the solar project. Section 4 discusses the duties and responsibilities of a planning commissioner, which most come right out of state law. And Section 5 is sort of the meat and potatoes of what went on permitting wise within the department from a planning and land use perspective. Site plans, there was a total of 12 of them completed and performed in the year. 8 of those were done administratively. That's due to an amendment we did in 2008 to take some of those smaller projects and instead of hold them up for a period of time and send them off to the planning commission, we could do those administratively in-house. So we did 8 of those in our office versus those going to the board. The board did see 4 for the total of 12.
That way, people don't have to wait for a fairly simple permit.
Yep.
to go through,
Yep.
wait for the next planning commission.
Addition, yep, additions, for an example, addition to an existing like industrial facility that's like less than 5,000 square feet. Doesn't have to go to the planning commission for all. It's already been to the planning commission. It's already been permitted. Landscape requirements are in place and all that stuff. We're just putting a pretty basic, simple addition on. It comes through for administrative review versus a board review. Section 5.2, special use permits. We held 7 public hearings for special land use permits, which was up a few from the previous year. Zoning amendments, we did 1 conditional zoning amendment, which would have come to the board here and was approved by the board for a conditional zoning amendment. Section 5.4, township zoning amendments. We reviewed township zoning amendments. We did review 4 of them this last year. 2 were from Union Township and 2 were from Chippewa Township. We do zoning for those commissioners that are new. We do zoning in 10 of the 16 townships at the county level. 6 of them do their own. We do no zoning in villages or cities within, that's under state law. And we also contract currently with Co-Township to administer their plan and zoning for them. Master plans, we did receive 3 letters of intent, which is required under state law. That's from Union Township, Lake Isabella, the city of Mount Pleasant, and we did review the draft of Co-Township's master plan. Farmland agreement review, there were 11 applicants, 7 different townships, 790 acres of land, moving into PA 116 or renewing in PA 116. Which was up drastically from, or down drastically from the year before. But as you guys know, you see these PA 116 applications, it's just a roller coaster. These things kind of come and go. They're long-term. So you see them on and off. There's no science to why we're down. Next year we could be down again, or we could be way up again. So, yep.
A lot of them were converting to trust.
Trust, true. Yep.
So they were private ownership, a lot of them were redoing their succession plan, so they put.
Yeah, especially with this as well, this solar activity going on while they were moving land for that and stuff, yeah. Permitting, administrative permits, we did 185 administrative permits on top of those site plans and other things in our office. We also see, roughly 100, probably a little more than 100 complaints. Complaints are really hard to track individually because we get a lot of calls on complaints that don't get recorded. We get, feedback and phone calls, but there's roughly kind of 100 interactions we have with regard to complaints. And that includes Co-Township, which we contract for, and we do their complaints for them as well. Zoning Board of Appeals, there were 11 applicants last year for 10 different variances, 1 essential public service. The board seen 6 the previous year, so that's up a touch. Some of the amendments we've made over the years, I look back to like early 2000s, we were doing 40 and 45, 50 variances a year. So we're dramatically down from that from a variance perspective. But we every year take a look at our ordinance to find out, why are we granting variances? Is there something in our ordinance that can be modified and changed? And I think over the couple decades that I've been doing this, since then, we've made modifications to the ordinance to change that, to make it easier for an applicant so they don't have to go to a board, much like the site plans we talked about earlier. But these numbers, have stayed under about a dozen for the last probably decade or better now, because of those modifications that we're making in-house. We got a note on their administration building, just because we used to meet there and now we meet over here. Planning Commission goals for 25. Their goals are to continue to review the ordinance and make recommendations to the board. Reviewing language for renewable energy, which we're going to go over. We have a renewable energy activity amendment coming up. Maintain open lines of communications with the townships. We did several surveys over the years. The latest one was in 22. One of the top things that the townships want from us is communication with them. So we've made some adjustments over the years. Like we have an agenda spot for township concerns on our planning commission agenda. So townships can actually come there and talk about planning and zoning related things for their township specific. We do get one consistently, Jackie Curtis. Two or three others, on occasion will come. We don't usually fill that slot up very much. But we also do provide notice and minutes and agendas to both the supervisors and clerks that have notified us and said they've wanted it. I do believe we've got every township doing that. We just reached out to those that turned over in the last election to make sure we had the proper email addresses and such for them. So we're doing as much communication as we possibly can, because it was a number one goal of theirs. And that really kind of completes the annual report for the Planning Commission for the year. Any questions about that?
Thank you.
Losing my voice too, sorry. The big talking piece is yet to come.
All right.
One more.
Speaking of zoning amendments, number 9, consider adopting zoning amendment number 25-01, which amends the language of the Isabella County zoning ordinance related to workable battery energy storage systems and renewable energy ordinance amendments, and authorize the board chairperson to sign the same.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of give us a little bit of history and a back, kind of moving us to why we're doing this, why now, and why we're doing this. So in November of 23, Michigan became the first state in the Midwest to set statewide energy storage targets, calling for 2,500 megawatts of power to be produced by 2029, and that's under Public Act 235 of 2023. There were two acts that were signed at the same time, Public Act 233 and 235, both relating to this item. Prior to the legislation, Michigan's two largest utility companies, both DTE and Consumers, had made announcements that their portfolio was going to expand by using battery energy storage. It's the next wave of componentry to the renewable energy function. You can have wind and you can have solar. We have power at times. There's a no need time. They want to be able to store this. The more storage they can have, the better we are from a grid perspective. Consumers planned for 75 megawatts of power by 2027 and 550 megawatts by 2040. DTE's plans call for more than 1,500 megawatts of storage capacity by 2042. The Graham Sustainability Institute Center for Empowering Communities at the University of Michigan published a planning and zoning for battery storage systems, a guide for local governments, which is this little guide I got right here. Through all of this legislation, that's what their work was on, and that's what they did. In November of 23, the other act, Public Act 233, which was the Michigan's new energy siting law, became effective on November 29th of 2024, so just a couple of months ago. Essentially, what the Public Act 233 did was it gave communities 3 options for approving renewables. The first option is to adopt a compatible ordinance. What a compatible ordinance is what the law says is what you put in your ordinance, nothing more. They have siting criteria in there. They have setbacks. They have some basic general lighting components, noise components, setbacks and such. The pros and cons to a compatible ordinance is the requirement under the law, if you have a compatible ordinances, they have to come to the local community. They're forced to come to us. They can't just skip us and go to MPSC. There are options in the law for them to be able to do that, which isn't good for us. We lose local control when they do it. Developers love the compatible ordinance because they know what to expect. The law's there, they love it, they're going to run through it quick and easily. If developers are going to like it, we're going to attract more projects, as we have in the past. Our process has been pretty relatively smooth in the projects that we've permitted here in the county, being 3 of them total, 1 in Co and 2 in Isabella, 2 under county jurisdiction. And the pro there of that compatible ordinance is it's available for those community award grant dollars that I spoke of earlier, so you can get those dollars. The cons is it doesn't let us put any local control in. We can't put any fencing requirements in. We can't put anything outside of what the law is. And there are many things that are being recommended to us and that we currently have in our ordinance that are outside of the law that protect our local community, screening mechanisms, fencing for security and safety and those kinds of things. So this is not one of this is one of the three options given to us under the law, but it's not the option that we chose to use at the planning commission level. The second option was to just do nothing, not have an ordinance on it, and let the MPSC take over. Just let them do what they want to do down in Lansing and then dictate what goes here based on the law. Again, developers are going to like that, but my understanding is they're not going to love that. It's a longer process at the MPSC and it's more costly for developers. So developers don't really want it. This group that got together to put this local community recommendation together and this guide together had legal scholars, had planners, had developers. It was a pretty good group of people that came together. And what they were hearing from the developers is they prefer not to go there. I've spoken with DTE, Vice President of Renewables. They don't have a desire to go to MPSC first. They want to come to us first. So the third option that was in the law is what they call adopting a workable zoning regulation for offsite BESS. And the workable basically is something, workable for starters, workable is not in the law. It's not defined, so we don't really know what it is. But what the legal scholars and those that put this document together here said is that a workable ordinance, it's generally understood that it is somewhat more restrictive than our compatible ordinance, but yet not so overly restricted that somebody's going to run to MPSC. So it's somewhere in the middle. It gives us the ability to provide some local mechanisms, some screening, some things like that, some fencing, screening, safety components for our community in place. Now, because it's not defined, there could be developers who say, we feel your ordinance is workable, and they come to us and they go through the process and they're fine. And there could be other developers who say, we don't believe you're workable. And if they're not workable, they can appeal us to the MPSC. We have an opportunity to sort of work through that process with MPSC, and they can potentially get their permitting through MPSC. We feel in the Planning Commission, I think some discussions I have had with the chairperson as well as with the Planning Commission as a whole, that the projects that we've had have been relatively smooth. We feel like the language that we have for wind and solar is workable. That's why they're coming to us. They're coming back to us for those reasons. So the Planning Commission made some decisions that the workable was the best option for us to utilize of the three. If we just do nothing and we sit back, option 2 is the one that takes over. They go to MPSC, we lose all local control. So what we did was we sat back and we utilized this document for some recommended language, such as definitions, workable published guidebook for different types of regulatory conditions that they were recommending would be workable, as well as what we currently have in our ordinance. For example, decommissioning. Mm-hmm. Decommissioning is the same for all three of them. For a wind project, as it is for a solar project, as it will be for a battery energy storage project, which is in the recommended language for the Planning Commission to you. So we feel using what the Institute gave us as a guide, as well as our local ordinances and all the dealings that we've had since tomorrow will be 8 years from the meeting on wind turbines. But we were working on it several years. So over the last decade of my work in working with attorneys, I feel we do have a very workable ordinance in place. And I do feel like the ordinance that is being recommended here is also a workable ordinance for us. There were some changes. I'm going to kind of jump into the language a little bit now. I'm not going to go through all of it in detail, but we'll walk through some of it. And if you have questions, I'll take them at that as we go through it. While going through this for battery energy storage, we did find some areas in the wind and solar that we felt needed to be modified or cleaned up or clarified. And so we made a couple modifications in those areas as well. But the bulk of this is dealing with battery energy storage, or what they call BESS, BESS. Any questions at this point before I get into the language? None? Okay. So Article 2 is our definition section of the ordinance. Under B, we're adding 3 definitions. One for a battery energy storage system, one for a battery energy storage system on-site, and one for a battery energy storage system off-site. Basically, a battery energy storage system on-site is an industrial or a commercial business that wants to have their own battery storage for their own utilization of their own business on their property, not going to the grid. Off-site means we're collecting it and eventually it's going to the grid. That's the difference between on-site and off-site, basically. Under the definitions section, we're changing some language under essential services. So we deleted the paragraph of a definition for essential services. And the only thing that really changed is the last sentence, basically saying that communication towers, antennas, wind energy conservation, solar farms, and battery energy storage are not considered an essential service under the law. And it was important for us to do so because utility companies could then come in and say, this is an essential service, no permitting happened, and they do what they want to do out there. It was recommended to us by our legal counsel, as well as through this book, to actually make sure that we make that amendment. And to make that amendment regardless if we were to maintain local control or if we were to send this to MPSC. So that they didn't try to come back to us as an easier route than MPSC and still get it in as an essential service. The next section, general provisions, defines what an on-site and what your permitting process is for an on-site. Basic permitting through our office. For on-site, you got to show some compliance with some standards within the energy storage arena, which is NFAP 2223 standard 855. The next section is agricultural districts. It's the table of permitted uses in there. We just have to add this as in that table. So the ordinance goes, each district has a table of uses. Since we're adding battery energy storage, we need to add it to the Ag 1, Ag 2, and Ag 3 districts. Article 7, commercial districts. In Article 8, industrial districts, we're making a change to the table of permitted uses with regard to solar farms now. Originally, when we put the language in place for solar farms, it was allowed in commercial, industrial, and in our agricultural districts. The reason we're recommending now to pull it out of the industrial and commercial districts is they're larger scale projects. We have very limited industrial and commercial land in the county, out county areas, not, City of Clare, Village of Rosebush, Village of Shepherd, Union Township, City of Mount Pleasant, but in those out county areas that we have jurisdiction over, it's very small. It might be less than the 229 acres that this last solar farm just put panels onto. Mm-hmm. So we said, we just need to back away from there. We intended, I think, to have it so that solar could be utilized in those districts, and the ordinance still allows it. Another commercial or industrial building that wants to use it for their own purposes can have it, but it doesn't meet the definition of a solar farm. A solar farm is dumping it to the grid. Mm-hmm. So we were able to pull those back because it just didn't make sense.
Adjusting to the times, right?
Exactly, adjusting to what we know today and the times, exactly. So then Article 12 is our special land use section. Obviously, we've got to add that as a permitted use in 1201 under purpose. Not a permitted use, but by special land use. And then Article 1205 standards. This is the standards for all special land uses, but the standard for battery energy storage needs to be added. And this language, like I said at the beginning, looks very similar to what our other two pieces of language look like. We have to have certain standards or certain requirements in here for all three of them under state law. We have them for the other two. We just implemented that same standard in place here. So you can go through like number 3. Number 3 on here are things we need in lieu of Article 12. Or Article 11, I mean, Article 11 is our site plan, where they actually give us the drawings. But we need location and dimensions. We need a statement of expected public benefit, graphical demonstrations. We need access roads to be detailed. We need screening, fencing, landscaping, berms, and signage, environmental analysis to be completed. So it's that full list that are in turbines, that are in wind, and that are now being proposed in the battery energy storage. A couple of areas under S, that is stuff that comes out of state law and being recommended by the Institute, are emergency response plans. They're required to file an emergency response plan, and they're required to do it in this fashion right here. They're required to create a fire response plan as well as an emergency response plan, and they're required to do it in this fashion here. Now, that is part of the compatible ordinance. Those are things that are spelled out right in state law that we have to put in here, that if we don't, there could be an argument that we're not workable and they could skip us and go to MPSC for permitting. So things that were workable according to them, items that were in our previous ordinance because they were workable, or things that are in the law, are pretty much what's dictated this amendment, wholly and 100%. Decommissioning is in here, same language as previous. Planning Commission did make one change at their last, at the meeting, recommending it up to you. And that is, I'll read it really quickly to you if I can find it fast. There was some discussion about contamination. And under the decommissioning plan, they were required to restore the soil back to its original condition. Well, the Planning Commission through discussion felt like, yeah, that sounds like it covers it, but let's get some contamination language in there. So we added to it, I just lost it again, apologize for that. As well as restoration of the soil and vegetation, including any potential contamination caused by the permitted use. So if there is contamination there, whether it's bringing the soil back to its original condition or there's contamination there, it means the same, it'll write the same. Legally, it'll probably be held up just as good, but we did include the language on contamination in there.
Is that contamination as, you know, described by a certain agency? Or, I mean, do we need to define?
I don't think
Who
we need.
defines contamination?
No, I don't think we need to define who defines contamination. I think if we have contamination, Eagle will be all over it as a Department of Energy, Great Lakes and Energy. They'll be all over it for us. I don't think we need to physically define who does it, because if we get a contamination report from another source, we can't accept it. We got to go to Eagle for it. So just contamination as a whole kind of leaves us open. If there is a claim of contamination, we can use that as the source. So other than that, decommissioning is identically the same. And later on in this document, we amended it in the wind and solar side, just so that they all read the same way. On to the next page, there are setbacks. All these setbacks come right out of state law, so we're meeting their setbacks. The next place is under noise. So the noise standard is the same for all three of them. When we first wrote ordinance in when we amended ordinance in 2015, I think it was, we amended the language on noise. And at the time, there was a recommendation to put in there, let me grab the language so I have it very specific for you. Noise emanating from a renewable energy source shall not exceed 50 decibels, not calculated as an average at a non-participating property line. So this not calculated as an average is pretty ambiguous. It doesn't give us a defined sound metric to use. When we went through our wind project, we used sound specialists to help us define sound metrics, so we knew which one we were going to use that was not a actual not actually calculated as an average. And so there was 2 or 3 different types. We used a L50, instead of an L max or an L10. We use the L50 as our standard. And so we're now clarifying the ordinance to say L50. It's probably one of the biggest questions I get from developers is, what do you mean there? How can you prove that to me? Does the planning commission really gonna, do what you're telling me they're gonna do? Now they're gonna be able to read it themselves, and I think it takes less question away, which I think makes it more workable, because the standard's been there, they've used the standard, we're just clarifying that standard to be an L50 at the same 50 dBAs at the property line, just like it was before. So the location and the sound level doesn't change, the metric is just now being defined.
Good question. Now you want to wait to the end.
You can fire.
Two thick questions on the sound. So when you get a complaint, how's that handled and who does the testing? Do you do the testing?
Yeah,
or
so-
hire somebody?
Yeah, so right now we go out and do some baseline initial stuff in staff. I'll take Ray, who's our enforcement person, and our planner. The two of us will go out there. We'll identify which turbine they're talking about or which, solar field they'll be talking about. We go out, we listen, we'll get an anemometer, or a sound meter. We'll test the sound. We're using sound meters on our phone, so they're not, it's a basic start for us. We haven't bought high technology stuff. If it appears to be way over, we're gonna address it. If it appears to be way under, we're gonna address that as well. If you're pretty close, we're gonna get a hold of DTE. So typically what we do is we figure out what's going on. We communicate with the property owner or the complaintee. We'll go out, we'll sit with them, we'll talk with them about what we found. Then we'll move off to DTE. We'll go to DTE and we'll say, listen, this is what we've got. DTE will bring in different sound meters of their own, much more professional than the one that sits on my county issued cell phone. And they'll run some numbers and we'll get an idea. At the end of the day, if I think it's loud or we think it's loud and DTE is coming back saying, oh, it's under your 50, it's at 44, here it is. We have secured in the process for all of these as part of the application process, a complaint resolution escrow account. So we have $25,000 sitting in an escrow account for turbines, fully renewable by the developer. So say I don't agree with DTE and we say, hey, we're going to have to get somebody else in here and get a professional in here and a third party and do it. They come in and they do it for us. They give us our numbers. They charge us X number of dollars. We pay that from the escrow. DTE has to replenish the escrow, so we have it for the life of the project. And then we have a good sound number from a third party and we address the condition that came up at that time. We've yet to have one that's got to using any of the escrow for complaint side. We have had a couple of noise complaints, but I think in our turbines, again, our turbines were permitted on January 29th of 2017, so 8 years ago tomorrow. I think we've had less than 4. I think we're at 2 or 3. If we got to less than a handful for sure of complaints. Now, citizens have been made aware and know that they can also make complaints to DTE. We don't always see those complaints that go to DTE, but if they're not getting satisfied with DTE, they're calling us. So I'm assuming DTE is satisfying whatever issue that came up. Because they're ultimately the responsible party, just like anybody. If business starts up, you got to follow certain parameters. We get a complaint, you're not following those parameters, we go out, the business owner needs to follow them. So, yeah, no different for them. So I think that pretty much covers the battery energy storage component. I'm going to jump into a couple changes we made for solar. I talked about them a little bit, but they're in here and addressed. We're deleting number 1, which is solar farms are allowed in these districts because we only allow them in the Ag 1, 2, Ag 3 district, which we put down below as a new number 1. Number 2 there, that's struck out. It's struck out because of that language for contamination that I talked about earlier. So down below, you'll find a new number 2I. Decommissioning. Oh, it got renumbered. Sorry. Yes, it gets renumbered because we've added a few things in here. So there's some renumbering going on, but it's a new 2M. And it's added back in there. Security fencing section number 6 was struck out, not because we don't want security fencing, but it's illegal for us to require Knox boxes. And we've required Knox boxes since we wrote the language originally, and that's changed since. So we're taking that Knox box language out of there. So in the case of an emergency, we can't have keys to a Knox box to get into their facility. And then the last one there, number 7, is the discussion I had on sound just a moment ago, changing that to clarify the not calculated as an average to be put in place. Noise emanating from a solar farm shall not exceed the hourly L50 of 50 dBA at a non-participating property line. Moving on to the wind, you'll see number 2 there, same thing for the decommissioning, struck it because we're adding that contamination land in below. Noise, clarifying and cleaning that up with regard to the metric, as I talked about. Adding in a couple other things, which is the state law requires us to obtain a permit for any renewable, a statement of expected public benefit. So we're adding that into both. Must have skipped it on the solar side, which is what put me off the numbering. Let me make sure it's there. It is. So number 2A on both of them is basically getting that statement as required by law. And then you're seeing the new language for the decommissioning, including contamination. You're seeing a new number 3 that I'm going to skip really quick and come back to. And then you're seeing the number 17, noise emanating, again, being the L50 metric. So number 3 deals with light pollution. The state law standard that would be put in place for a compatible ordinance is that renewable energy meets dark sky night standards. Part of the dark sky night standards is this aircraft detection lighting system. It's no longer the FAA all night long, all day long flashing going on. So ADLS is aircraft detection lighting system. It's been authorized by the FAA since prior to 2015, 2017, because we tried to implement it at that time. The board didn't really like it at that time. We're a little unsure of it, and we pulled it out at that time. Well, now the state law is basically saying if you have a compatible ordinance, you got to meet the dark sky standards. You got to have a standard like that in. This flashing standard would no longer be the appropriate standard. So we're adding that language back in here. It is probably one of the biggest belly aches around the community that I hear is the flashing red lights all day and all night, you know. It doesn't do anything for, just because I know the question is probably going to come, won't do anything for the existing project. Existing projects have been permitted when they're permitted a certain way. They're grandfathered and they're permitted that way. If the project were to be tore out and put back in fully, it would need to be replaced in that manner. There's also a caveat in this language, which is the exact language from 2015 that we utilized. And that is not everywhere is the aircraft detection lighting system going to work. It's a radar system. And so there are places in the country where the FAA does business that these things will not work. There's proximity to certain businesses, there's proximity to airports that they won't work at for disturbance purposes and such. But what we're saying in our ordinance is that for you to go in for a turbine project and you to file with the FAA, you're filing with ALDS first. And if denied by the FAA, that type of a system, they provide that to you in writing and the mechanism in which you're supposed to use to meet FAA requirements. That will be acceptable by the Planning Commission. So you still may end up with a flashing light out there. There's no guarantee. We're pretty flat. I'm not sure that the FAA is gonna turn us around for any of that, but in the event that they do, we could still end up with flashing. But the first choice is this dark sky function, which is using the ADLS, which is that radar system. And how that works is essentially they're off all the time. They turn on when there's a plane in the area. When there's a plane out of the area, they turn back off.
I have a
So,
question about that.
yep.
Actually, I was going to ask about that anyway. So the technology is better now than when we considered before? Or
No, it's pretty much the same technology. I think it was just my recollection is that Chairman Horton, who also was sitting on the plan, he wasn't chairman at the time, I think he was vice chairman at the time. But he was the seat on the planning commission. He just was not comfortable with it because it was new technology. But the FAA had approved it. It's not up to us to approve what the FAA is gonna allow. And Commissioner Horton just didn't like it. We were partway down the road, I think, on that other project. I think the company was the developer was a little bit like, hey, we don't like that either, because they're not cheap. It's not a cheap system to put in place. But it's not about the cost and it's not about what is. Now it's about having a workable ordinance, having language in there that meets these dark sky standards, which is what this brings to the table.
It was pretty new technology at the time.
It wasn't old. It was
Area.
it was about 3
Fire-
years old, tested in Montana,
Yeah.
about 3 or 4 years old, but the FAA did approve it. But I still understood still only 3 years old. We gotta wait for,
Yeah.
something to happen to be the one in the community that says, shoot, we did it early,
Been 8 years ago and now we're
Right.
finding out that it works
Yep, it's
as
working.
intended. yeah.
Yep.
Works. I know some of the discussion was, that I got a little pushback on it was on the crop dusters
Yep.
and the upgrading to the planes in there. The next question we have is, how do we address the drones? But they're not that yet, but I know that's kind of new technology and everything, but,
Yeah.
because the agriculture is starting to use a lot of drones for spraying. And,
Hopefully I'll be retired in the next 5 years, Frank.
There you go. I got video of the crop dusters going
Yeah,
around the windmills. and it's
turbines,
like-
yeah.
It's like, those guys are insane.
They're nuts to begin with, but then to throw those turbines.
Yeah,
is really
well,
low, right?
I know that was part of the problem is because
Yeah.
they didn't know a lot of the technology and it was so expensive.
Mhm.
Some of the smaller planes that fly into the Mount Pleasant Airport, like for the casino stuff and stuff, they were.
Yeah, there was some questions about the smaller planes having the technology on it, but a lot of your smaller planes, they fly at night either. So there was just a lot. There was a lot that we didn't know.
Yep.
We knew things from FAA, but we didn't know fully that I think we're more comfortable with, specifically because now we're being required to put it in there essentially by the state statute.
So if they went in and replaced a turbine,
Not a single. I know where you're headed. Yeah.
yeah,
Not a single. That's why earlier on I said it would have to be the farm that goes. A turbine that's in there that they're doing maintenance on and replacing can be replaced with the same technology that the FAA approves. Because you can't have one and then have this $700,000 radar for one turbine that's going to turn on and off while all the others are blinking all day.
Mhm.
It's going to be a farm itself. There has been some discussion at the planning commission level and God rest his soul, Jim McBride and I had some communications right before Christmas that we were going to have after Christmas. And hadn't been able to make, obviously, with his passing. But there's been some discussion about, and I've expressed to DTE, the concern of our community with the lights. And so I'm trying to strategize some opportunities for us to maybe go out and find some dark skies monies, grants and things that maybe we can pull the tribe a little bit in on, some grant dollars in a little bit in on, as well as DTE as a developer and to maybe make some retrofit changes, over time. So there's things we're looking at. There's no guarantees to it. So I don't want to get, the public excited that it's going to happen or anything,
Yeah.
but it is something that we're going to begin to start strategizing a little bit. And one of our planning commissioners brought it up to us 2 meetings ago. And we'd already sort of been thinking about similar things. And I've had conversations with DTE and they're like, yeah, that'd be great. All right, we'll talk to you later, and it goes away. And so I want to be able to maybe get some dollars in front of us, find out what those real costs are. They do want to be a neighbor of ours. They've indicated it to us. They've been very good to work with the public. I've seen them interact with the public. They've been very good with our office as neighbors in our community. And so I'm hoping that they'll come to the table and maybe we can find a way to fix that in the near future.
Tim, my question is, since they have to go through and replace these blades, they have a short, 8-year life expectancy?
I have no
8 to
idea.
10?
I have no idea.
Is there any way that at that time, as they go through and replace all the blades, that
they'll
we can
replace all the-
actually, just indicate that once they've replaced the whole system with all new blades, then they have to go to the dark?
I don't think you'll tie those blades to, I don't think we'll be able to tie the blades to it, because once a project is permitted,
Mhm.
they've been authorized to operate under what they were permitted under. And they were permitted under the standard that equipment goes out, nacelles will burn up, gears will break down, blades will break down. It was all part of the system. Even those lights go out.
Right.
I've had complaints that the light's out when it's really on. They're hard to see when you're up close because they're not intended for ground viewing. They're intended for, aerial viewing. So it's hard to see them at an angle from a distance. You can't, but I have seen a couple of them that are out. That turbine is shut down. They're immediately on it. I've seen them do this on a couple occasions.
And then my other question is back to what Commissioner Sweeney had stated in regards to the contamination.
Mhm.
I would like to revisit that as far as indicating Eagle in that document, as well as how often is the soil being tested on these site locations?
Well, we don't do any testing. It's not our responsibility to test the land. It's their responsibility to clean it if they contaminate it. Just like a gas station, just like any commercial business, just like any industrial business, just like any agricultural business.
But nobody's policing it?
Nobody polices any of the land from that aspect. If you make a complaint today to Eagle that somebody's dumping oil out on the back of their property, then Eagle has mechanisms to go in on that side. But we don't locally. That's not a function of local government.
Is there any department that we could actually utilize for that from the state?
I mean, Eagle would be the complaint. People call our offices all the time and say, hey, so-and-so is contaminating over there. Well, we
Just
don't.
because we have this in the documentation, we're not enforcing it until the end of the day, when they're getting ready to pull their systems.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, therefore, then our water's contaminated, our rivers are contaminated, especially when we're talking about putting in battery systems.
Mhm.
I think somebody needs to be, somehow we need to indicate that
Yeah.
there has to be some form of documentation that these sites are being inspected properly.
Yeah, I think you have that, Bob, with any use you have out there that has the potential for contamination. I mean, it's the same, whether
Right.
you're if you own a light manufacturing business and you have oils that are contained out in barrels and something happens to a barrel and it leaks out, it's the same. Nobody knows unless an employee complains, they address it. But Eagle's not going out and making these visits, to see if properties have contamination. I don't believe from a farmland perspective that like Department of Ag does that either.
No, but of course with the meat verification in there, yeah, we're more on cleanup and on everything else.
But on the battery portion, I would like to personally see, then therefore they have to hire a third party to come in and do.
We don't require that for any manufacturing that has worse chemicals in this county. So, I mean, we're holding them to the same standard as every other manufacturing facility, right?
Yeah, there would be no different. Yep. No difference.
Well, quick question.
I mean,
Let's go ahead. I'm gonna go.
that, I
to a
mean,
different
that way,
topic.
I mean, I guess my point is that, now you're requiring us something special for a specific reason when there's no real legal difference between them, the battery, and other manufacturing sites or farmers. I mean, that use chemicals. I mean,
Again, we do have, just like we do for wind and solar with the application process, that escrow for complaint side. So if we were to have a fire, we were to have something that somebody would make a complaint on, we could get a hold of the applicant, we could go out, we could take a look around. I don't know that we would see the contamination necessarily, but if there was an incident that we felt took place out there, that we felt needed it, we could talk specifically with them and we could get Eagle involved at that time. But that's just like any other business. The nice part here is that we have escrow money that's theirs, that we're not spending it as a local government. It's DTE's money. It's the developer's money. So I think that's probably the best protection we can get for our citizens, which is the same protection, except we have money on hand for them to be able to cover those costs and us not be strapped with those costs. Because if we needed to go get a third-party specialist to come in, we go talk to Eagle and Eagle says, yeah, it appears there is some contamination out here. Then we tell them to get some soil samples and we're gonna pull some soil with the third party and we're gonna do some comparisons and see what's going on here.
Okay.
I know if we have a spill, we have to report immediately. If we don't report immediately, we're in violation and we're legally liable, so. If we have a spill on a road or even out in the field, a big one, we have to report it immediately. If we don't. I mean, that's part of our requirements for being certified to buy chemicals and stuff, that we have to do an immediate notification. So, yeah, so if you don't do that, your liability goes way up out of there. So I'm sure DTE has to.
I would assume they would have a
liability.
similar type of
Yeah,
reporting
liability, but-
function, yeah.
Of course, the landowners, you should be watching that, even though he's not allowed to go on that property if it's a farmer or something else. I would hope that he'd be watching that. Most farmers I know watch their land pretty tight, so. Yeah. Another topic, everybody done with this one?
Yes.
You were talking about the blades replacement on them. Is that considered a normal maintenance?
Yep.
Okay, so it's still in the contract if they have to do a rebuild that gets redepreciated, or is that something
Well, so,
like if a motor goes out, they have to replace the
yeah,
motor?
so DTE utilities are self-reporting with regard to industrial personal property taxes. It's on them. We don't report it. We don't do anything. But that's why I put that permitting process in place in our office so that we know, we'll be able to get that report. I don't know if Pete Preston was here, he'd be able to give you the number of
Okay.
that report, but whatever that report is that they're reporting out on, we can see the previous years. And we should probably look back to the previous year to this year to see where we reported out. We can see what that factor is. And if it's the 12% or 10% or whatever the depreciation is for that year. If it's only that, but yet we've seen new blades go in, we can turn around and question DTE about it. But again, they're self-reporting. I'm not sure how you challenge them necessarily.
All I know is every time I see a truck or a crane going in my head, I'll get a bunch of calls.
Yep.
What's going on there?
Which is another reason why we set up that permitting
Yeah.
process, because before the crane comes in, before the blade comes in, before the cut comes in, do you need soil erosion for some of that cut? Do you need some other permits from us too? We want to know before the public's calling us. Yep, they've got a planned event going at this site. You're gonna see
And that's
attorney
another,
here. So,
the previous one, if one of those turbines go bad, I can't remember how many gallons of oil they have in it.
Yeah, I don't.
Broke a seal or something, it would be a mess, so.
Yep.
They do have a lot, so that'd be another thing where the contamination could be an issue, but, okay.
Again, they're also required, in the law and in this ordinance, that emergency response plan and that fire response plan. So I think you're gonna get a lot of that stuff out of their plan, like in the event of a fire or potential contamination. I'm hearing with the cells and the design and development that there is no contamination, but I'm not the scientist in here, to say that that's the case, but those are the things I'm hearing. So I think, your fire response plan, your emergency response plan, your complaint process with the escrow dollars and the ability for people to make a complaint to us on environment and us to be able to contact Eagle is probably as good as you're gonna get for a requirement on contamination. I think that's it. My voice is
Okay.
still here, but I think that's
Yeah,
it.
Appreciate that.
So yeah, essentially,
Walking us
this
through
has
that.
been recommended, public hearing held by the planning commission. Recommended to you for approval. So we're just seeking at this time, your approval of the language, which then requires obviously chairperson's, signature.
Very good. Item number 10 is consider approving addendum to the current Region 7 Area Agency on Aging Purchase of Service provide agreement and authorize board chairperson to sign the same. And Director Crawford, good morning.
Good morning. So this, I attached the original waiver agreement to your, to the staff report. So this is already in place, our agreement with Region 7 Area Agency on Aging, and just what it is, the waiver program is basically the purchase of service through Medicaid for individuals who require a higher level of service than what we would provide. They actually qualify for nursing home care. And then there are some waiver providers. So we have 2 in our community, A&D Home Health Care, and then Region 7 Area Agency on Aging. And so they're the providers of that service. And then they can reach out to local organizations for assistance. So they will reach out for us. Like we provide most of our waiver that we provide for them would be our home delivered meals. Like we provide meals to those clients that they have in our community. Sometimes they'll reach out to us for help with either personal care or homemaking, and our aides can go in for that. So that's what we do with the purchase of service or Medicare waiver program. They have participated since COVID when premium pay started. They have also stayed right in line with the state and have provided that as well for any service we provide. Any of our in-home care, those aides receive premium pay. And so when this was passed in October, beginning October, they had it at $3.20 an hour for premium pay, and this is just an amendment, an addendum. They're just replacing addendum F with this new one, which they raised it 20 cents. So now it's $3.40 an hour, and then for the agency, for our cost to process this, we receive 44 cents an hour. And so this $3.40 an hour, it just goes directly to our aides. It cannot be part of their salary. It's something they receive on top of the service they provide.
That's great. Even nursing homes too, did you say?
Well, the clients are in their homes, but they would qualify for nursing home placement. They have that higher level of need. So they require higher care in their home.
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of people really want to stay in there.
Absolutely.
As
And
long as they
the
can.
waiver program is a great way that helps individuals stay in their home longer who do have that need.
Maybe for the benefit of the new commissioners, you could explain that area agency on aging structure.
Absolutely. So they're basically a coordinating agency for us. They receive state and federal dollars. And then we're recipients of those through grants through them we receive funding for both our in-home program and our nutrition program. So for our congregate home delivered meal program, and then also our in-home would be, we receive funding for personal care, respite care, homemaking, and then also our case management services. So for those services, we're able to bill to them each month for how many hours that we perform, and then they give us a reimbursement. And it's about 20% of the cost that we pay for that. And so our senior millage is what we rely on most heavily to help us to recoup those costs or to continue to provide those services. And all of the services that we provide in-home, home delivered meals, part of that program is that we can, as far as our clients or individuals who utilize those services, they're donation only. So if they would like to, we provide them a donation statement. If they choose to reimburse a portion of anything we provide, that's totally up to them. If they don't, we still provide the service. And same with our meals. For anyone 60 and older, it's donation only. So if they would like to contribute, they can. And if they don't have it or choose not to, they still get the meal and no questions asked. So we're able to do that through this funding and our senior millage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11 is consider scheduling an Isabella County Board of Commissioners special meeting for the purpose of goal setting on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025 at 2 p.m. or as soon thereafter as immediately prior Finance Committee of the Whole is brought to closure in room A of the Isabella County Commission on Aging located at 2200 South Lincoln Road, Mount Pleasant, Michigan.
So this topic was raised by Commissioner Jelzewski at the last meeting, so we just put this out there with the date, kind of similar to what was last year, same time, following the morning meetings. We could break, have lunch, and then come back here. We've already got the room reserved. If this date works out for everybody, then we'll have an agenda that'll come out like every other one, with different topics that the board wants to discuss, specifically to this goal setting session. And having it during the day also allows for staff to come in here and get the input from staff on what they would like to help contribute to the discussion. So if this time and everything works well, we will then put out all the appropriate notices. Or if there's another date, time, please let us know.
I need to check to make sure that we're not gone during that time for spring break.
Okay, I tried to coordinate like with the area schools because I know a lot of boys and stuff. So yes, if you could check. And then just get back with us. So maybe at the next meeting on the 4th, we can set the date at that point or whenever. Just want to put it out there for start the discussion.
I think too, at that meeting, part of something that should be on the agenda, I think, is a review of all our facilities. We've done that in the past, so if we're prepared and ready to do that, go over our facilities, our capital improvement plan, most of which we've kicked down the road because of financial difficulties. That should be reviewed as part of a goal setting session. And I'm wondering too, if a tour of the county building prior to that would be advantageous.
Yeah, just coordinate it and then we'll make, Mr. Shoemaker will be available to, with the tour. And I think that's a great idea. But if you got any agenda items that you would like on here, let me know and then we'll make sure it's on the agenda. So everybody, if there's a topic that you want to see on there, just email me, Julie, and then we'll make sure we get it on the agenda.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions, comments on that before we move on? Hearing none, we'll move right down to new business.
Just a
Yes.
point of order.
Mhm.
Since this is a public meeting, do we need to have a motion to establish this date?
We will do that at the regular meeting on the 4th. We'll
Okay.
put it on the agenda at that point, once everybody's able to verify the availability on their calendars.
Okay.
So if you have ideas for what we should be discussing, let Brian or Julie or somebody know so they can get it on the agenda. And with that, we will move down to new business. Commissioner Marino had some new business that he wanted to discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you commissioners know, we got an email from Amanda Klein from the Hardest Organization. And for the public, I just want to read this brief thing. I hope this message finds you well. My name is Amanda Klein and I'm reaching out on behalf of the American Heart Association. As February is nationally recognized as Heart Month, we'd be honored if you and your team bring awareness to heart and health, cardiovascular disease prevention in Isabella County. Heart disease remains the leading cause of death in the United States, impacting countless families across our nation and within our community. Together, we can help shine a light on the importance of heart health and empower our residents and with knowledge and resources to lead healthier lives. And specifically, what she asked for is a number of things: issuing a proclamation declaring February as Heart Month in your county to emphasize the importance of cardiovascular health. And she's emailed a template that we could use if we didn't do that. Also wearing red on February 7th, encouraging county staff and officials to wear red and raise awareness to women's health, heart health as part of AHA's Go Red for Women initiative. And 3, social media and public messaging, sharing heart health tips, resources, and event information on official county channels to reach a wider audience. Okay, I'm suggesting, if it's all right with everybody, to submit the template to Julie, or so we can do that proclamation at the next meeting. I wish they would have given us more time. It's really button up right on, next month, but if anybody has any concerns or willing, to, what's your feeling about this, commissioners?
I don't have any issue with it.
No, I don't have a problem.
Pretty benign.
Don't have any
Pretty simple.
issues. Perhaps the health department could do something community-wise, to get information out.
I'm sure they are gonna do it. This is just appealing to us. Commissioners.
The proclamation looks fine. The one thing I didn't reference, is there's one proclamation for every household to join the Nation of Lifesavers. I don't know the Nation of Lifesavers, and I don't know what joining them entails, so.
We could just strike that out.
We could, I just would saying we should check what that is before we
Right.
proclamate it.
Right?
Where's that part at?
It's towards the bottom.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Yeah, I know. Yeah, this is just a suggestion. We can
Yeah, no.
tailor it to our,
Yeah.
situation.
The whole proclamation looks good. Other than just fact check that.
Oh, I see somebody said, Shelley Hogan, let's just strike this on that very same item. Do you see that on the?
Mhm.
So
I mean, yeah,
we could just strike that and I'll submit that to Julie.
Okay.
If that's all right with everybody.
That'll look good.
I
for
would
everybody.
be in favor of suggesting that everyone look into learning CPR on that line. Certainly, yeah, as a past coach and things, in sports, it's very valuable to have some knowledge, even if you don't use it.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. And then up next is general public comment. Anyone for general public comment?
I just sit here.
Mhm.
I wasn't prepared. I just heard about the meeting, so I came in. Recently attended the planning commission meeting on January 9th. And I was kind of shut out that day. Normally I can talk, but it became this question and answer thing. And what I wanted to say was how bad these battery storage systems are for our community. You know how I feel about the solar. We're learning more and more about the solar every day. Recently, I've discovered that a lot of these solar panels are coated with PFAS, and PFAS are those forever chemicals that leach into the ground. Another thing that you folks brought up here today about a certain language that's not required for other manufacturers. However, I feel that contamination should be in your wording, especially with the battery storage facilities, because the United States is number 2 in the world for battery storage fires with these lithium ion batteries. You really need to take that into consideration. And I would recommend that you folks put it back to the planning commission. And then also you need to update your solar. As far as I understand, it's like 8 years old, the ordinance. I'm not for sure on that, but that's kind of what I thought. And I was here, I gave you all some information about Dr. Nevin from St. Clair County. I hope everybody had a chance to view that. It had some really good information in there about the health effects of the solar panels and batteries. So if you haven't looked at it, please go back and look at it. I know Mr. Smith forwarded those on to you, so you should have those, except with the new commission.
I was gonna say, was that recently?
It was in January,
Oh, okay.
so
Or December, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think January, December.
Okay.
okay. So,
Sorry.
and as far as right now, you're relying on a complaint-based system. I feel that somebody needs to do this, routine inspections and go out and check these. I know in Gratiot County it's the same thing. They rely on complaints from the community. But whether they know who to complain to or not, I don't know, but it really needs to be oversight with people doing inspections. And I wouldn't rely on DTE for self-reporting. We all know that there's issues with DTE. I've said it before with Gratiot County, they've had to settle litigation with DTE. They'll try and get out of anything. So just please consider what you're considering today. And if you're not satisfied with any part of it, send it back to the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I just want to say I love Sheila. She is blessed to speak so eloquently. I was not gifted with that. I'm very confused. Aren't energy and solar wind supposed to be good for county finances, helping our financial situation? So why do we have a budget that failed to protect public safety with our deputies? How and why do we have money to assess noise of solar and wind energy projects, but again, not for deputies to provide safety? In noise, who will enforce noise control if there are no deputies? And we're talking in the area where there are no longer deputies. As far as contamination and the source of determination must be defined. We just saw what happened with millions of dollars being frivolously used to abate asbestos that did not need to be abated for public safety. Actually, I shared just yesterday a well-written letter from a bidder whom detailed the lack of necessity and pointed out how recommendations need to be based on good analytical data. If you want Eagle standards, adding language that specifically states by Eagle standards would offer proper decision-making and clarity. And Eagle, do you guys even know who Eagle is? And do you know what Eagle said about our asbestos problem? Do you know what they said about our asbestos problem? You should read the letter that I just shared yesterday. They did not, because it was not a problem. Possibly this board should look into suit against the company that recommended unnecessary evacuation and abatement of the county building. Let me say that again. Possibly you should look into suit of the unnecessary evacuation and abatement that was recommended to that county building. I believe all aspects of moving forward with business that is not an emergency or a necessity needs to be put to a full stop. Halting non-necessities until deputies are restored and you all steer us away from spending any more money for your messy projects and county building project expedition that was nowhere near necessary and quite possibly the worst decision that could have been made. With that said, I politely request a follow-up answer on potential furniture storage. Let me say that again, furniture storage. In the county building in which all doors and studs were dangerously covered with asbestos and needed to be removed, has furniture from the dangerous asbestos county building been saved for reuse? Possibly you can address this with truth and transparency as a matter at your future special meeting coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for general public comment? See no one else, announcements.
This might be a good time to try our new meeting here. If Director Shoemaker would like to come up and tell us a little bit about the condition of that building. Or if you want to do that later, we can do that. Give you a week to prepare.
I can bring more figures that we have to get us.
Yeah, because I know we've had discussions about the working conditions and what we actually found in there, and so much of the information that we have is just so much incorrect that we'd like to correct the statement. And so, you know, what you hear on social media is not always what the facts are. So I think it'd be a good idea. This new system is where we're going to bring in some people to talk on different things. We need to bring somebody in from Eagle. If they'll do that, we could do that, or maybe someone from the our workman's comp person, or you know, some. But that's kind of what this new format's going to do, so we can actually address some of these publicly, be able to address some of the misinformation that gets out there. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but we did have this discussion before. Yeah, I'll let you prepare. I'm sure you're a real good public speaker, so But if not, thank you.
Any other announcements? Or motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor say yes.
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 Adjourned at 11:58.
Can I get your, please?
Commissioner?
Private business.